This is awkward to keep meeting like this. This is NixOS number 89, and this is number something in a series of me talking about the PhD thesis that Eelco Dolstra wrote that formed the genesis of Nix. In this one, we're going to talk about section 2.3, package management. In the last video, we went over Nix expressions, or at least the introduction to Nix expressions. And in this section, we're going to talk about what happens after we evaluate our expressions to actually build software. So Eelco says, now that we've written Nix expressions for hello, we want to build and install a component. That is, we want to reach a state where the hello component is in some way available to the user. In a Unix system, this means that the application should be in the user search path. So some of this stuff is maybe a little anachronistic. Nixenv, the command nixenv, is not really pimped by anyone anymore. It's still documented, still works, and still manages profiles, which he talks about a little bit later. But I think for the most part, most people write expression files, configuration.nix or whatever, or they'll use something like Nix profile, which is an alternate way of managing profiles. But in any case, the principles are the same here, so we'll just talk about this stuff. So it says Nixenv manipulates so-called user environments, and this is a way to install hello using the composition that we created in the last video. It evaluates the Nix expression in all packages Nix, meaning that whatever's in all packages Nix, it evaluates, looks for a derivation with symbolic name hello, builds a derivation, makes a result available to the user. Woohoo! The building of the derivation is a recursive process. So Nix will build dependencies of hello, which entails building their dependencies and so on, the closure of the thing. However, if a derivation has been built previously, it will not be rebuilt. And if you've used Nix for any period of time, you will know that this is a apt description of what happens when you install Nix stuff. You can query the set of components. Yeah, fine. We can do upgrades and rollbacks, which is interesting. Use that file and install hello. I am not familiar with Nixenv, so I get some of this wrong. So this is a standard procedure. This is what most people want to see when they get to Nix, and they don't. They're foiled by the UI of Nixenv. But we can roll back to the previous generation. Generations? What? The reason this is possible is that the new version of hello resides in a different path in Nix store. There's no destructive upgrading in the purely functional model. Components never change after they've been built. So that is he's demonstrating that building things this way results in an environment that can be rolled back. If you install something and you don't like it, you can go back to an older generation. User environments. User environments are Nix's mechanism for allowing different users to have different configurations and to do atomic upgrades and rollbacks. So, as we saw before, components are things that are, it's what other systems might call packages, and these components get installed in the Nix store. They are just files on the file system. It's like building a piece of software with -- prefix, equals user local or something like that, but they're put in the Nix store. And at that point, we just have a bunch of software on the file system that's in the Nix store. And what he's saying is here, of course, we could put all the stuff that's in the Nix store on the path, and in the path environment, the Unix path, to include all their bin directories, but that's not very convenient because changing the path doesn't take effect for processes that are already running, so you'd have to shut down all your shells and shit. So instead of doing that, Nix creates directory trees of symlinks to activated components. And these are called user environments, and they're components themselves. They are also stored in the store. They are not generated by a Nix expression. They are generated by your use of Nixenv. Of course, what he's saying is, you know, they would wind up a Nix, a user environment, like Nix store / blah, 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 user env may contain a symlink to somewhere else in the store, to the bin directory of the subversion that we created by installing subversion. But that doesn't actually solve the problem either, because the user doesn't want to type Nix store blah, 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 user and bin svn either. So he's saying we create symlinks outside the store that point to the user environments in the store. Inside the Nix var Nix profiles directory, there are profiles. A path, our path, our Unix path is tilde, home directory .nix profile /bin. And if we are Alice, our Nix profile points over here at this default profile. And he goes on to explain this, but I'm just going to explain it here because it's easier to read on the screen. Default here, Alice's profile it points at this default file here. This Nix profile is a symlink, so it's home Alice Nix profile. It is a symlink into Nix profile's default, and likewise, default is a symlink to default 43 link, or it might be a symlink into default 42 link. These are the generations. So we have a bunch of generations that the current generation is just represented by the name of the profile, but then there are other things inside of our Nix profiles directory that are specific generations of such a thing. And inside of each one of these things, we have these are actually symlinks into the Nix store, into these user env things. And these things are just big ass bags of symlinks that point at specific versions of specific piece of software. So default 43 points at this user env. Inside of it, it has a bin directory, but it also has, inside the bin directory, has Firefox and SVN. Those are the two names that we can use to actually fire up Firefox and SVN. Those point at specific versions of Firefox and Subversion. The 42 generation of the default profile, it doesn't have Firefox. It only has Subversion, and it points at a different version of Subversion. So over time, as we generate environments, we have a different set of software available to us on the path. And that is the point of a user environment. One really cool thing about this that really is fucking awesome. It's just so awesome, is that it means that upgrades are atomic. And this means, I guess it sort of depends on the file system, I suppose. But in reality, there's sort of an unspoken contract that the one operation in Unix that should be atomic is to make a symlink, is to create a symlink to something else. And the whole process of making all these symlinks doesn't take effect until Alice's Nix profile is linked over here to this default thing. Like until that happens, we could totally fuck everything up inside of the Nix store. It doesn't, we won't, because it's carefully orchestrated. But if we happen to leave shit half done inside the Nix store here, or inside any of these profiles here, Alice is still fine. She's pointing at the old profile. We haven't upgraded her yet. So she's cool. We didn't leave Alice in any state that is terrible. It's just she's in the old state. And the last step in the upgrade, switching the current generation symlink, can be performed in atomic action on use. Oh, yes, it can. Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's so good. Okay. Goes on to mention that different users can have different profiles. The current user's profile is pointed out by symlink Nix profile or the home directory. And he says we can switch profiles. This is kind of, nobody does this. Really. Well, at least I don't do it. And a corollary to this thing is that because we're only adding software to the store, we're not actually deleting or we're not changing existing paths to upgrade software or to change the profile. We eventually, every so often, we have to reclaim disk space, and so we have to run the garbage collector. And so he mentions NixEnd as a way to do this. I don't know all the latest, greatest stuff. Because I use NixOS, I don't typically interact with the imperative way of installing software. So I'm pretty weak in this. Yeah, oof, it's so good. But what he's saying is that the generations here, these links, these default 42, default 43, Carol 23, whatever, are garbage collector routes. And when these symlinks are deleted and we don't have anything referring to stuff over here, so if default 43 link is deleted and we run a garbage collection, it means that this Firefox and this subversion will go away. Right. So we have to reclaim space. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the gist anyway. It says the advantage of garbage collection components is that users never need to consider whether some dependency might still be needed. This is like so common phenomenon. Like, can I delete food DLL? And I don't know. Is anything still using it? In other systems, there's no way to know. There's really no way to know. Well, there are ways to know, but they're not very good. Man, it's so much better. So much better than shit, almost anything else. Okay, so I think I'm going to call that a video for now. We'll come back in another one and do section 2.4 store derivations. Thanks for watching.